Self, a new definition. Number 1, self. Who you are when you are alone, or one's physical, mental, and emotional being. Number 2, self. What is real and what you perceive to be real. 3, self. Action defines self. 4, self. The face of you that is capable of analyzing the rest of you. 5, self. That which is you, physical, soul, mental, or what you choose to do, define your skill and interest. As I mentioned earlier, there are various definitions of the self and other similar or interchangeable concepts in psychology. Simply put, self is the sense of personal identity and of who we are as individual, according to Zhang Weini and Tari 2014. William James 1890 was one of the earliest psychologists to study the self and conceptualize the self as having two aspects, the I and the me. The I is thinking, acting, and feeling self, Gleitman, Gross, and Reisberg, 2011, Hag, and Boghan, 2010. The me, on the other hand, is the physical characteristics as well as psychological capabilities that makes who you are, Gleitman, Gross, and Reisberg, 2011, Hogg, and Boghan, 2010. Carl Rogers' 1959 theory of personality also used the same terms, the I, as the one who acts and decides, while the me is what you think or feel about yourself as an object. Gleitman, Gross, and Reisberg, 2011. Other concepts similar to self are identity and self-concept. Identity is composed of personal characteristics, social rules, and responsibilities, as well as appellations that define who one is. Oyserman, Elmore, and Smith, 2012. Self-concept is what basically comes to your mind when you are asked about who you are.
Self-identity and self-concept are not fixed in one time frame. For example, when you are asked about who you are, you can say, I was a varsity player in 5th grade, which pertained to the past, a college student, which may be the present and a future. A future politician, which is the future. They are not also fixed for life, nor are they if changing it every moment. Think of a malleable metal, strong and hard, but can be bent and molded and other shape. Think about water. It can take any shape of the, the container, but at its core it is still the same elements. Carl Roger capture captured this idea in his concept of self schema, or your organized system or collection of knowledge about who you are. Gleitman, Gross, and Reisberg, 2011, Giangiani, and Tari, 2014. Imagine an organized list or a diagram similar to the one below. Self, hobbies, religion, nationality, family.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ricardo Deto Jr., so I am the first reporter. What we'll report now is all about the self as a cognitive construction. The scheme is not limited to the example above. It may also include your interest, work, course, age, name, and physical characteristics, among others. As you grow and adapt to the changes around you, they also change, but they are not passive receiver. They actively shape and affect how you see, think, feel about things. Gleitman, Gross, and Rosberg, 2011. Janjayani and Tare, 2014. Henry Gleitman. Henry Gleitman is a professor of psychology and the former chair of the department at the University of Pennsylvania. He is the recipient of the American Psychological Foundation's Distinguished Teaching in Psychology Award 1982 and from the University of Pennsylvania, the Abrams Award 1988 and the Lindbach Award 1977. He has served as president of the APS Division 1, General Psychology and Division 10 Psychology and the Arts. Most importantly, Professor Gletman has taught introductory psychology for 5 decades to over 40,000. James Gross. James Gross is professor of psychology at Stanford University and director of the Stanford Chopsology Laboratory. Professor Gross' research focuses on emotion and regulation processes in healthy and clinical populations. His 150 or so publications include the Handbook of Emotion Regulation, Guilford 2007, and he has received Early Career Award-winning teacher, a Boston University Fellow in Undergraduate Education, and the Director of the Stanford Psychology 1 Teaching, the Stanford Pi Beta Kappa Teaching Prize, Stanford's Postdoctoral Mentoring Award, and Stanford's highest teaching prize, the Walter J. Gores Award for Excellence in Teaching. Daniel Resberg. Daniel Resberg, author of the best-selling Cognition Exploring the Science of the Mind, 4th edition, Norton 2010, is professor of psychology and chair of the Department of Reed College in Portland, Oregon. Professor Resberg has over 2 decades of experience in teaching psychology's intro course and also teaches a popular course in cognition. He teaches advanced seminars on thinking and on psychology and the law. His research has focused on the nature of mental imagery as well as on people's ability to remember emotionally significant events. He has served on the editorial boards on the editorial of many of the field's journals and also served as a consultant for the justice. For example, when someone states your first name even if they are not talking about you, your attention is drawn to them. If you have a provincial language and you hear someone using it, it catches your attention. If you consider yourself a book lover, a bookstore may also entice you and out of all the other stores in a mall. Kasi 'di ba, we are talking about our names. Tapos pag yung may mababanggit na pangalan na especially tulad sa'yo, syempre yung isip mo is nakatuon na sa pinag-uusapan nila or baka ikaw yung pinag-uusapan nila. Attention to details kumbaga. Tourists generally see the self and identity as mental constructs, created and recreated in memory. Oyserman, Elmore, and Smith 2012. Current researches point to the frontal lobe of the brain as the specific area in the brain associated with the processes concerning the self. Oyserman, Elmore, and Smith 2012. The ID, ego, and the superego. The ID is the primitive and instinctual part of the mind that contains sexual and aggressive drives and hidden memories. The superego operates as a moral conscience, and the ego is the realistic part at the midgets between the desires of the ID and the superego. So ito po ang example ng ID, ego, and superego. ID. I need to eat this second. Ego. You can do that because you're in the middle of an important meeting. And then sa superego, eating during an important meeting is rude and inappropriate. Under the theory of symbolic interactionism, G.H. Smith, 1934, argued that the self is created and developed through the human interaction. Hogan-Bowman, 2010. Basically, there are 3 reasons why self and identity are social products. Oyserman, Elmore, and Smith, 2012. We do not create ourselves out of nothing. Society help in creating the foundations of who we are even if we make our choices. We will still operate in our social and historical context in one way or the other. You may of course transfer from the one culture to another, but parts of who you were will still affect you will also have to adapt to the new social context. Try looking at your definition of you of who you are and see where society had affected you. Kasi hindi ka lumalago o hindi lumalago ang iyong sarili na para lang sa wala. Minsan kasi mas kinakailangan ng ibang tao na magsasabi sa iyo ng tama at mali. Yung taong yun is society. Kinakailangan mo ang matibay na pundasyon para tumulong sa iyo buuin ang iyong sarili. Nakakatulong din ang kultura sa mga nakaraan at mga naging karanasan.
Good afternoon, I'm Gilbert Reyes. I will report the continuation of the lesson 3, the self as cognitive construct. Number 2. Whether we like to admit it or not, we actually need others to affirm and reinforce who we think we are. So sabihin man natin o hindi, mas nakikilala natin ating mga sarili sa mga nasasabi ng iba. For example, sa social media, sa araw-araw na paggamit natin ng Facebook, mas nabubuo yung ating mga sarili sa mga comment, feedback ng ating mga friends. So number 3, what we think is important to us may also have been influenced by what is important in our social or historical context. Kung ano yung mahalaga sa atin ay impluwensya ng ating paligid. Example, mahalaga sa atin ang pag-aaral dahil lumaki tayo sa pamilyang pinapahalagahan ng edukasyon. Social interaction and group affiliation are vital factors in creating a self-concept, especially in the aspect of providing us with a social identity of our perception of who we are based on our membership to certain groups. For example, isa kang estudyante na kabilang sa isang grupo ng magkakaibigan. Nag-aaral ka dahil ito ang iyong layunin bilang isang estudyante. Pero mas gusto mong mag-aral kasama ang iyong kaibigan. Kaya naiibang iyong paraan sa pag-aaral pagkasama ang iyong kaibigan kaysa sa mag-isa ka lang. There are times when we are aware of our self-concept. This is also called self-awareness.
Lesson 3. The self as cognitive construct. Self-awareness. Ano nga ba ang self-awareness? Self-awareness involves being aware of different aspects of the self, including traits, behavior, and feelings. Essentially, it is a psychological state in which oneself becomes the focus of attention. People are not born completely self-aware. Yet, research has also found that infants do have rudimentary sense of self-awareness. Infants possess the awareness that they are a separate being from others, which is evidenced by behaviors such as the rooting reflex in which an infant searches for a nipple when something brushes against her or her face. Have also found that even newborns are able to differentiate between self and non-self touch. Self-awareness is one of the first components of the self-concept to emerge. Self-awareness din ang tawag kapag alam mo yung nakakapagpagalit sa iyo, nakakapagpalungkot at nakakapagpasaya. There are times, however, when we are aware of our self-concept. This is also called self-awareness. Self-awareness also presents us with at least 3 self-schema: the actual, ideal, and up-self. The actual self is who you are the moment. The ideal self is who you like to be. And the up self is who you think you should be. An example is that you are a student interested in basketball but is also academically challenged in most of your subjects. Your ideal self might be to practice more and play with the varsity team, but up to pass your subject as a responsible student. One has to find a solution to such discrepancies to avoid agitation, dejection, or other negative emotions. In some instances, however, all 3 may be in line with one another. Self-awareness may be positive or negative, depending on the circumstances and our next course of action. Self-awareness can keep you from doing something dangerous. It can help remind you that there is an exam tomorrow in one of your subjects, when you are about to spend time playing computer games with your cousins, among others. In other instances, self-awareness can be too much that we are concerned about being observed and criticized by others. Also known as self-consciousness, Janjayani and Tari 2014. At other times, especially with large crowds, we may experience individuation or the loss of individual self-awareness and individual accountability in groups. Fistinger, Pepitone and Newcomb, 1952, Zimbardo, 1969, and Janjayani and Tari, 2014. A lot of people will attune themselves with the emotion of their group, and because the large crowd also provides some kind of anonymity, we may lessen our self-control and act in ways that we will not do when we are alone. A common example is a mass demonstration erupting into a riot. Our group identity and self-awareness also has a great impact on our self-esteem. One of the most concepts associated with the self, it is defined as our own positive or negative perception or evaluation of ourselves. Kaya importante ang self-awareness. Bakit? Self-awareness is important because when we have a better understanding of ourselves, we are able to experience ourselves as unique and separate individuals. We are then empowered to make changes and to build on our areas of strength, as well as identify areas where we would like to make improvements. One of the ways in which our social relationship affects ourselves is through social comparison. According to the social comparison, the 7 to 9 about ourselves, the appropriateness of our behavior, as well as our by comparing aspect of ourselves with other people. The downward social comparison is the more common type of comparing ourselves with others. At the same implies we create a positive self-concept by comparing ourselves with those who are worse off than us. By having the advantage, we can raise our self-esteem. Another comparison is the upward social comparison, which is comparing ourselves with those who are better off than us. While it can be a form of motivation for some, a lot of those who do this actually felt lower self-esteem as they highlight more of their weakness or inquiries. Yun lang po. Thank you for listening.
Self-evaluation. Social comparison are what we call self-evaluation maintenance theory, which state that we can feel threatened with someone outperforming us, especially when that person is close to us like friends and family. In this case, we have three ways. So, sa social comparison, from the word itself, comparison, kino-compare natin yung sarili natin sa iba, kaya pag nahigitan tayo ng taong yon, nagpo-frustrate tayo, lalo na kung malapit sa atin yung kino-compare sa atin, like kaibigan or family. Halimbawa, kinompare ka ng magulang mo sa pinsan mo. So, ikaw, pag nahigitan ka, nade-develop mo yung mindset na competitive in a bad way. First ways, we distance ourselves from that person or redefine our relationship with them. Some will resort to silent treatment, change of friend, while some also redefine by being closer to that person, hoping that some association may give him a certain kind of acknowledgement also. So sa first ways daw, dumidistansya tayo sa taong kinukumpare natin sa sarili para maiwasan din natin yung comparison. Para hindi na rin natin ma-feel na mas naikulang sa atin or mas higit siya. Or pwede namang pinipili natin maging close sa taong yon para mapansin din yung galing natin at para ma-acknowledgement na din tayo. Second ways, we may also reconsider the importance of aspect or skill in which you were outperformed. If you got a beating drawing competition, you might think that drawing is not really for you. You will find a hobby where could excel those preserving your self-esteem. So sa second ways, kapag may mas magaling sa atin sa isang bagay, pakiramdam natin hindi para sa atin yon. For example, sumali tayo sa competition na pagsasayaw. Natalo tayo. So iniisip natin yung pagsasayaw ay hindi para sa atin. Maghahanap tayo ng hobby na kung saan feeling natin dun tayo nababagay or mag-excel yung sa ating self-confidence. Lastly, we may also strengthen our resolve to improve the certain aspect of ourselves. Instead of quitting drawing, you might join seminar, practice more often, read books about it, and add some elements in your drawing that makes unique among others. Achieving your goal through the hard work may increase your self-esteem too. So sa last daw, instead na maghahanap ng ibang hobby, mas pinipili nating mag-enhance pa yung talent natin at magpupursige tayong matuto, maging magaling sa certain things na gusto natin instead na kalimutan yon at maghahanap ng iba. Once na na-achieve na natin yung goal na yon, which is pinaghihirapan mo, lalong tataas yung self-confidence mo. However, in the attempt to increase self-esteem or maintain self-esteem, some people become narcissistic. Narcissism is a trait of characteristic by overlay high self-esteem, self-admiration, and self-centeredness. They often charismatic because of how they take care of their image. Taking care of their image includes their interpersonal relationship, thus they will try to look better partners, better acquaintances, as well as people who will appreciate them a lot. This make a bad romantic partners or friends since they engage in relationship to serve themselves. So, ganun pa man, dahil gusto natin magdagdagan ng ating self-confidence at pagpapahalaga sa sarili, ang ilang tao ay nagiging narcissistic. Ito yung pinapahalagan at mataas ang tingin sa sarili. Gusto lagi siya yung hinahangaan, ayaw na nalalamangan, ayaw din ng pinupuna. Ito rin mga taong self-centeredness or mga bida-bida. Gusto laging may kakumpetensya, gusto lagi siya yung panalo, at ito rin ang mga taong selfish. Sometimes there is a thin line between high self-esteem and narcissism, and there's a lot of test measurement for self-esteem like Rosenberg scale, but the issue is not the result that can be affected by desire of people to portray herself in a positive or advantageous way. In this case, you want to take a test and find numerical value level of your self-esteem. Try to be honest and objective about what you feel and see about yourself, and true self-esteem is very important concept related to self-study. Have shown that only a correlation, not causality to positive outlooks. It can be argued that high or healthy self-esteem may result to an overall good personality, but it is not, and should not to be only source a person's healthy perspective of herself. So sa base dito, mayroon linya sa pagitan ng mataas na pagpapahalaga sa sarili at narcissism. Ito yung sinusubukan or pagsubok para pagpapahalaga sa sarili. Ngunit nagkakaroon ng issue at ang resulta ay pwedeng maapektuhan ng kagustuhan na ipakita ang sarili in a positive way. Tapos, kung makuha ka sa pagsubok, kung saan bilang lamang yung pagpapalaga sa sarili, dito susubukan kung gaano ka katapat at kung gaano ka katiwala sa nararamdaman mo. At makikita mo tungkol sa sarili mo na napakahalagang konsepto ang pagpapahalaga sa sarili na pwedeng magkaroon ng positibong pananaw. People with high self-esteem are commonly described as outgoing, adventurous, and adaptable in a lot of situations. They also initiate activities and building relationship with people. However, they may also dismiss other activities not to do conform for their self-concept or boost their self-esteem. They may also the bullies and experiment on abusive behaviors with drugs, alcohol, and sex. This duality in the behavior and attitudes only proves that above mentioned correlation by Mr. Smart and Bowden. In this research on self-esteem conclude that programs, activities, and parenting styles to boost self-esteem should only be for rewarding good behavior and other achievements, and that for the purpose of merely trying to make children feel better about themselves or to appease them when they get angry or sad. Ang pagpapahalaga sa sarili ay nagkakaroon ng mabuting pag-uugali. So, ang self-evaluation ay ito ang pagbuboost ng confidence mo sa sarili.